Hey, what's going on, guys? So recently we took a look at this book. This is the Gunpla Super Technique Easy Finishes for Weekend Modelers book, and there was a lot of really cool stuff in here. A lot of you guys seem to really like that review of this, and so I thought it would be a really great opportunity to actually go through and try out some of the techniques in here, demo them for you guys on a kit, and that's what I want to do today in this video. So if you haven't seen that previous video going through the book, you can go back and check that out. There'll be a link in the video description down below. But just as a quick recap, the book basically goes through a series of 1/100 scale model kits, mostly MG and RE, and shows you a bunch of different techniques that you can do to get a professional, quote-unquote professional looking finish, just a really nice finished model without completely painting the kit. Now there definitely was some painting that goes on in the book and some of the different techniques, and we will do a little bit of painting in this video, but we will definitely not be fully painting the kit, as that's again just kind of the whole theme of it, is to not have a fully painted kit. The book is by Teppei Hayashi, who does a number of these books, and I actually forgot this at the time, but this book and a few others in the series are available in English, but only in a digital version that you can get for your Kindle. If you want, you can check that out. Otherwise, I just went through this and just used my phone to translate some of the sections that I was most interested in, and that worked out fine. I prefer to have a physical copy, but if you want it all in English and not to have to do any of the translation, the English version is available for you guys, and I would highly recommend checking these books out. So for this video, I'm going to be using the Master Grade Gelgoog version 2.0. It's one of the models that is featured in the mook, and I am going to be doing some of the same techniques from the mook on that kit, on that Gelgoog, on this Gelgoog, like some of the more extreme damage, and of course some of the weathering techniques. But then I'm also going to take some techniques that were used on other kits and apply them onto this kit as well. So we're gonna basically be taking a mix of some of the techniques that I thought looked the most interesting from there and applying them all to this one kit, just as a demonstration for you guys, just to show you how you all can use some of these techniques to add to your kits, whether they be painted or unpainted. And this, like I said, I'm not going to be fully painting the kit, but you could apply a lot of these same techniques to a fully painted kit as well. So the first step is obviously just going to be snap building the kit. I won't be doing a full review of this, but I have done reviews on 2 different versions of the Gelgoog previously, so if you guys are interested in seeing a review of the Master Grade Gelgoog version 2.0, you can check out my reviews of the Gelgoog Cannon and the Uma Lightning's high mobility type Gelgoog. It's all essentially the same kit, just with those P-Bandai versions. They had some extra parts and things in there, but it's a fantastic kit. The short and sweet version of the review is that I just highly recommend this kit. It's one of the best Master Grade kits out there, in my opinion. It's a really nice looking kit. It's a really well engineered kit, so I highly recommend it. Another thing that's going to be important for this project, and really any project, before you go into the project, it's important to have in mind what you want to do, and maybe even write it down as a list. And that's what I've done for this project. I've actually made a list of the steps that I want to go through, because certain steps need to come before others and certain steps need to come after others, and it's important to keep that in mind so that you don't end up having to fix any mistakes by having to go back or having to fix anything. You know the order ahead of time of the steps that you're going to be doing for that particular build. And as I said, the first step for now is just to build up the kit entirely. Now, because we're not going to be painting the kit, I do need to be very careful to not leave any nub marks, and especially of like the white stress marks. This kit does have a lot of dark colored pieces, so as a lot of you guys probably know, on the dark colored plastic, a lot of times you can get these like little white stress marks from where you're removing the nubs. There is different ways to get rid of those marks, so let me go ahead and start working on the kit, and then once we can run across any of those, as I'm sure we probably will at some point, we'll demonstrate how to get rid of those. One easy trick that you can try to get rid of the white stress marks if you get them on your kits is to use a Gundam marker, and you're going to want to use a color close to the color of the plastic. So if it's a lighter color, maybe use like a gray. If it's a darker color, you can use a black or brown, something like that, whatever is going to be closest. Just color on the stress mark a little bit and rub it off, and hopefully enough of that marker will kind of seep into the plastic that it should make it less noticeable. That's one quick and easy fix, but another technique that I've found is working really quite well for this particular model is using plastic cement. So if you use Tamiya extra thin cement, once you cut the nub off, and if you have a little bit of stress mark on there, or if it's not totally clean, just put a little bit of that plastic cement on there and let that sit for at least an hour or so. I would give it maybe a little bit more time if you can. That'll basically melt any imperfections and get rid of the white stress mark, and then you can just go ahead and sand that clean, and it should be nice and smooth. And you might have a little bit of discoloration, but it should be pretty unnoticeable. Alright, so now that I'm almost done with just the initial assembly, it is definitely taking a lot longer than a normal snap build would, just because I'm just trying to make sure that everything is as pretty as possible, since we're not going to be fully painting it, although we are going to be putting a fair amount of paint on here just with some future steps in the process. But for now, a couple of modifications that I want to talk about. Number one, I'm going to be using the Rakuten Bazooka here. This is from a master graded DOM kit, and I've gone ahead and just removed the seam line on this. Looking up closely, you'll see that there are still a few bits that are going to be visible, but we will be putting some paint on the weapon here, similar to some steps that are covered in the book. And I am going to opt for using the antenna type head. Now I do want to modify this, and nothing really too major. I just thought I might as well make it sort of a little bit custom, a little bit different. So all I'm really thinking to do is just kind of cut the very tip off of that. There we go, simple enough. And now the antenna is a little bit different from the stock options, but it was just a really simple modification. And that's what this whole video and this whole build is really all about. Small, easy, simple things that you can do to make your build look a bit more unique. And so I think that works out really quite nicely. One final aspect of modification then is just going to have to do here with the back. And I've always found the back of the Gelgoog to be very plain because it doesn't have any kind of backpack. Here's where you can mount the weapons if you want, but since we're not going to be doing that in this case, I thought I might take this backpack, which is left over from actually a 1/144 scale kit, but I think it might work quite nicely. Of course it's small, but I don't want to make anything too major. I just want to look like an extra kind of little bit of backpack that it has, just something there on the back. So what I'm thinking I'll do with this is just make this so that this can just plug right here onto the center of the back right there. I'm going to get rid of this thruster bell here at the top, and then maybe just put a little vent detail part or something like that up in there so that it's just got the two thrusters there at the bottom, and this will just be here on the back. It'll just add a nice little bit of detail to the back side of it, again, just to make it look a little bit more custom. So next thing we have to do then is thinking about it logically. What are going to be the major steps that this mobile suit is going to have gone through by the time we get to the finished product? So for example, if we went in and did all of our weathering now, and then we go later and take off the armor panels, it's going to look a bit weird because then we're going to be exposing areas that we didn't weather, and any physical damage again will be just exposing areas that are not weathered. So we need to first go through and do all of our quote-unquote damage to the suit. Like for example, I'm going to omit these panels here off of the lower leg on this side, and also the armor panels here on the thigh. Now I'm doing it opposite as to what was done in the book. If we look back at that one, it was the armor panels on the lower left side and the thigh of the right side, and then so it kind of like goes back and forth. So we got missing armor here, then here, then here. And so yeah, I'm going to be doing it kind of just exactly opposite that, just because I want to make mine a little bit different. Now, one thing about the sample build here in the book is there's, in my opinion, too many of these kind of like slash damage marks. Like you have the ones there on the chest is like the big one there, and then here on the arm you have like the same, let's see if I can find a good photo where you guys can like see it very clearly. You have the same type of like cross slash here on the side on like the back of the hand, and then one going across that part on the side of the forearm. That's a bit too much. I'm not going to do that much, although I do want to do some beam saber slash effect, and so I'm going to be using a soldering iron for that. Again, trying to think about it realistically, what I thought might be cool, in the one in the manual, it has the shield kind of broken off here through the center. I want to have a slash because I'm trying to think about it. If it has the shield on its arm and it's trying to block an incoming beam saber slash from an enemy mobile suit, it would go to the shield, and so that is a good opportunity for us to, number one, damage the shield, and then also imagine that it's also breaking through the shield and damaging the shoulder armor in the same kind of stroke of one same beam weapon slash. So that's what I want to try to recreate here. I'm satisfied with how that looks, and that's actually going to reveal some nice detail on there once this is all done. But right now it doesn't go back on all the way. When we get out our Dremel tool later, I'll have to Dremel out the inside of that a little bit because some of that melted plastic is kind of blocking this from pushing back on all the way where it needs to be. But for right now, staying with the previously mentioned idea of basically going opposite to what's in the book, rather than damaging this corner of the skirt armor over here, I'm going to damage the opposite side, which also makes sense because this side, it has the shield to block this side of the mobile suit, whereas on this side it has no shield, it's holding its weapon, so it's more vulnerable to getting hit here. Now I want to differentiate between beam damage and you know, artillery damage, like from a bazooka or something like that, as to how that looks. So we did that damage for like a beam saber damage. Here I want to make it look like it's some sort of like a bazooka impact, and so we want to make some damage around here, and you have to imagine that would probably damage the thigh armor and possibly knee armor a bit as well. I'm gonna leave the knee armor alone as that's probably far enough away. We may do some extra chipping around the knee armor just to show maybe some of that affected there, but I may just do a little bit of extra damage here, not all the way through, but a little bit of damage to this portion of that thigh armor right there, just to show that it kind of took a impact from a bazooka here. Now, melting it with the soldering iron is a way to show beam damage, but you have to imagine if it's from an explosive like bazooka round, then that's probably also going to increase, it's going to create incredible heat as well. So just because a beam, it's not a beam weapon, we can still use the soldering iron for that. But let's first go ahead and remove some of those parts just as physical damage, just from just using nippers. And while we're here, I'm also gonna take a little bit out of the back, this kind of section around here like that. Also, keeping with the manual, we're gonna remove these parts. I think I was kind of debating it. Actually, yeah, on second thought, I think I may keep these on here, these arm parts, but I'm gonna paint them in a little bit different color to show that maybe those parts were replaced with new parts. So we'll keep them off for the time being, but we're not gonna take them off forever. One thing that I do want to do a little bit differently as well is, rather than having the X across the chest, maybe just have another bazooka or beam rifle impact, something around here that's gonna kind of damage this area around the top of the chest and the head and the shoulder slightly. So I want the main point of impact to be here, as in like it kind of just missed the headshot, but it did do some splash damage here onto the shoulder and to the head, and we can get at that with the Dremel, with a mixture of the Dremel and the soldering iron as well. So let's go ahead and work on some of this damage some more. So as you guys can hopefully see through this process, and I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup on this, is that I'm not trying to make it look like it was melted necessarily like with a beam effect, but rather that it was an explosion, and then obviously with that explosion comes extreme heat and fire and burning, so it looks like it was just, you know, exploded, and then there's some scarring around the edge of that just from like the flames or whatever from the explosion. Anyway, this is all science fiction stuff, so it really doesn't matter, you know, how accurate it looks, because there is no such thing as accurate in a completely science fiction universe, but I think that's looking pretty good for an intended effect. And let's see how this is gonna look once we've got this back on the kit there. You can see that kind of nicely exposes a little bit more of that frame down there. So I'm gonna recreate that up here around this section at the hips, and then up here at the torso a little bit. And alright, so there we go. It looks extra kind of shiny now just because I slopped some plastic cement on there, and that's just going to kind of just help to get rid of like the little plastic burrs and stuff from the process. I did also use the Dremel a little bit on the frame just to roughen up the look of the frame a little bit, because you would imagine that, you know, okay, the frame, the armor is blown off, the frame is still there, but it's definitely going to be, you know, a little bit damaged. So that's it for our main damage. Now we need to add some little kind of small arms fire, like maybe it's taking some damage from like a Vulcan gun, or just kind of general wear and tear. Now if this was in space, you would want to kind of add some you know, maybe scratches or just kind of small dents here and there all over the place, because if it's flying around in space, it's going to be crashing into little bits of space debris and things like that. On ground, it's not going to have that, but it is going to have some of that probably around the legs, where, you know, it's stepping on stuff, or like a tree or a building or something like that that's kind of getting in the way that it's crashing up against. So there's probably going to be a bit of wear and tear around the legs. So we'll go ahead and add a little bit of that, add a little bit of small arms fire. Now you could use a Dremel, or we could use the soldering iron. It's really kind of up to you. Just kind of depends on how big you want to go at. You really don't want to make the bullet holes too big, because, you know, again, thinking about it realistically, if it's got a bunch of big bullet holes in it, that armor is not going to be really all that useful, and probably that armor would either be replaced or it would be just taken off, or I don't know. I guess it's totally up to you, but I'm not gonna go too overboard with the size of the bullet holes on this. Alright, so then last step that we're going to cover for part 1 of this video is just going to be adding some Zimmerit. So this is something also that I've never really done before. Well, I've just never done it. And again, thinking about this realistically, you know, at some point in its life, it may have been, you know, when it first rolled into battle, or maybe, you know, after its first battle or two, then, you know, the engineers or whoever decided, okay, we better add some Zimmerit onto this. So this is probably a good stage for us to go ahead and add the, thinking here realistically, now that we've already done our damage on it, let's go ahead and add some of that. Now I've just got some epoxy putty. I'm just going to mix some of this up. And as far as I understand it, there's not anything too difficult to it. You basically just want to lay a thin layer of epoxy putty in the area that you want to add the effect, and then add the kind of the detail pattern, and that's about it. And working with epoxy putty is pretty straightforward. It comes with 2 different materials that you have to separate out in equal measurements. So as you can see, I just kind of like a little strip of each. Helps to have some water on hand as well, just so that it's not sticking to either your fingers or your tools or whatever. You may want to use gloves for this step. I usually don't, but you guys can let me know in the comments whether that's good or not, okay or not. Probably somebody's gonna tell me that it's poisonous and you shouldn't handle it with bare hands, you should wear gloves. Anyway, you'll know it's mixed up well enough once you start to not see any of the darker yellow or white, and it's just kind of all a even lighter yellow color like that. That's when it's properly mixed. And I really only am gonna use a little bit, just because you only need a thin layer of it, and I'm not gonna put a whole lot of this on there. So let's just get some of this worked in around the areas that make sense. Now they make specific tools for making this pattern on there. I don't have one. Maybe I'll get one in the future, but for now I'm just gonna use this tool, and it should work well enough as long as it's not peeling up my putty. As you can see, it is. In that case, that means that the putty is sticking to my tool rather than sticking to the plastic. So I'm just gonna press that back onto there and just make sure the tool is wet, and then the putty won't stick. And you can see it's gonna look something like that. And again, I'm no war expert. I'm just kind of making it how I know it's generally supposed to look. Alright, and yeah, that was looking pretty cool, so I decided to add a little bit more than what I expected. Basically, I thought it made sense that it's added around kind of the large panels around the feet, because the intention is to not get mines, I guess, stuck onto the outer armor panels, which would be kind of from soldiers, which would be around near the bottom. Again, it doesn't really have to make all that much sense. The main point is that it looks cool, and I'm happy with how that's looking. Now, obviously, we're not going to be painting the full kit, so the problem is now we've got these big yellow spots there that need to be matched the color. So in the next part of the video, we'll finish the kit, but what we're going to start off doing is just adding some paint over just these sections that is going to match the color. So I just need like a dark gray and a lighter gray, something that's doesn't need to match 100%, but something that when we add our other effects and everything over, it's going to blend pretty well, that you won't really notice so much that the color's not exactly right. But for now anyway, I think our example is looking pretty good, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it finishes up once we start adding some paint and other effects to it. Now again, this is, you know, a project that the whole point of this project is to not fully paint the kit, but, you know, just try out a bunch of different techniques to make it look cool without actually fully painting it. So that's what we're going to continue on and finish in the next part of the video. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think of the process so far? And again, guys, for your reference, if you've not seen the video on this mook, which I'm using as the basis for this build, to go back and check out that video. But for now, thank you guys all so much for watching. If you want to check out, you know, the kits and tools, supplies, a lot of the stuff that I use, or anything else available, you guys can check the link in the video description to USA Gundam Store. And if you'd also like to like and subscribe while you're here, that would also be appreciated. Until next time, guys, see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye!